Did you know that a text with only 12 verses holds the actual blueprint to the entire universe?
Yeah, and at the exact same time, it maps out the absolute dickest layers of your own consciousness.
Right. It teaches that the simple, single-syllable Om basically encompasses all of reality. I mean, this is the shortest of all the Upanishads, but it is about to reveal the absolute deepest truth of the self.
It really is incredible how much they packed into just 12 mantras.
Totally. So if you are ready to expand your mind today, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, drop a like on this video, and share your reflections in the comments as we navigate this incredibly profound philosophy.
We really do love reading those.
We do. And as we explore this ancient text today, I want you to listen out for 3 mind-bending moments. First, the teaching of how Om encompasses absolutely all reality.
That one is a big conceptual leap.
Oh, for sure. Second, listen for the intricate explanation of the 4 states of consciousness that you cycle through every single day. And third, the ultimate revelation of something called Turiya.
Right, the self beyond all dualities.
Exactly. So welcome to this deep dive into the Mandukya Upanishad. Like we said, even though it contains only 12 mantras, it is widely considered the very essence of all Upanishadic teaching.
It really is the distillation of everything.
And we are viewing it today through the really profound lens of Shankaracharya's commentary. He emphasizes that realization of the self through Om leads directly to liberation.
And we're also going to be heavily featuring Gaudapada's Karika.
Right, which we need to talk about because Gaudapada's contribution here just, well, it cannot be overstated.
No, it can't. I mean, he was the teacher of Shankaracharya's own teacher. And his work, the Mandukya Karika, it basically takes these 12 mystical, almost poetic verses and just subjects them to rigorous, unsparing logical analysis.
Because he lived in a philosophical climate where Buddhist logicians were essentially tearing down traditional Vedic orthodoxies, right?
Exactly. They were dismantling the old ways of thinking. So Gaudapada stepped into that arena and used this razor-sharp rational systematization to prove the doctrine of non-duality.
He didn't just want people to take it on faith.
Not at all. He doesn't ask you to just blindly believe the Upanishad. He sets out to logically prove that reality operates as a single, undivided consciousness.
And that distinction is crucial for this deep dive. I mean, we aren't just looking at religious dogma here. We are looking at an ancient, highly sophisticated epistemological proof.
Yeah, it's philosophy at its highest level.
But before we can even touch the architecture of human consciousness, which, takes up the bulk of the text, we have to establish the literal embodiment of that reality.
We have to talk about
Right. The text demands we confront the syllable Om, and it really does not ease you into this concept.
No, the very first mantra just hits you with a massive declaration. It says the syllable Om is the universe. Whatsoever has existed, whatsoever exists, whatsoever shall exist hereafter is Om.
That is just such a massive claim.
And it goes on. And whatsoever transcends past, present, and future, that also is Om.
So it establishes immediately that we are not dealing with a conventional symbol here.
Exactly. A conventional symbol points to something else. Like the way the word fire points to the hot, burning phenomenon in the physical world.
Right. Like if I write the word fire on a piece of paper, the paper doesn't burn. The word is not the fire.
Exactly. But in the Upanishadic framework, Om is not merely pointing to the supreme Brahman. It is the sonic manifestation of Brahman itself.
Which is wild. I mean, Sri Ramakrishna stated that Om is not counted among words.
Yeah. And Swami Vivekananda explicitly noted, it is not a word, it is God himself.
And I'll be honest, my initial reaction to reading that was, well, a lot of skepticism.
Oh, sure. That's a natural reaction.
I mean, how can a sound produced by human vocal cords bypass the category of language entirely? But then I looked at the Sanskrit grammatical breakdown provided in the commentary, and the linguistics actually back up the theology.
They absolutely do. The linguistic mechanics of Sanskrit are deeply intertwined with its philosophy.
So explain how that works, because I found this fascinating.
Okay, so in Sanskrit, words are subject to a process called declension. Nouns change their suffixes and internal structures based on their role in a sentence.
Like they morph to indicate singular, dual, or plural quantities.
Right. They alter their forms to show possession, or to act as the subject, or to serve as the object of an action. They are entirely contextual and mutable.
Much like the physical objects they describe in the phenomenal world.
Exactly. They are bound by the rules of cause, effect, and environment.
Just like a physical tree changes in winter versus summer, the Sanskrit word for tree changes based on its grammatical environment.
But Om belongs to a really rare category of words in Sanskrit called avya.
which means indeclinable, right?
It refuses to change. It possesses no plural form because the ultimate reality it represents is strictly non-dual. I mean, there simply cannot be two Brahmans.
And it possesses no possessive form either.
Right, because Brahman encompasses everything. There's nothing outside of it to own. So no matter what grammatical pressure you apply to it within a sentence, Om remains completely immutable.
It's like a structural mirror for the concept of an unchanging eternal reality amid a universe of constant flux.
That's a great way to put it. It forces the speaker to physically enact the concept of immutability every single time they speak it.
And the Mandukya Upanishad actually traces the lineage of this sound through a very specific chain of physical and metaphysical realities.
Oh yeah, the quintessence of the essences.
Yes, it calls Om the quintessence of the essences. It states the essence of all beings is the earth. The essence of the earth is water. The essence of water is vegetation. The essence of vegetation is man. The essence of man is speech. And the essence of speech is Om.
That progression is literally a cosmological map.
Unpack that a bit for us.
Well, think about how matter organizes itself. The earth is just a collection of particulate matter. But without water to bind it, to provide cohesion, it remains lifeless dust.
So water is the essence that allows earth to coalesce and generate life.
Right. And then vegetation is the physical manifestation of water's life-giving essence drawn out from the earth.
And human beings, in turn, sustain themselves by consuming that vegetation.
Exactly. Our physical bodies are literally constructed from the distilled essence of plant life.
We are basically walking, talking conglomerations of transformed earth, water, and sunlight.
But the chain doesn't stop at the physical body. It crosses over into the metaphysical. It identifies speech as the essence of the human being.
Which makes sense. Out of all our biological functions, the ability to articulate complex thought, to conceptualize reality through sound is our defining distillation.
Yes, speech is the highest evolutionary fruit of the human form. And if you take all human speech, all the millions of words across thousands of languages used to describe infinite varieties of objects and emotions, and you distill them down to their absolute foundational root, you arrive at the primal vibration.
Which in Sanskrit is called the Mula Shabda, the root sound.
Exactly. So chanting Om isn't an act of trying to reach out to a distant deity.
You are vibrating the root code of your own existence.
The texts even mention that the sun is continually sounding Om. The evolutionary energy, the heat and light that literally animate our solar system are physical manifestations of this continuous underlying vibration.
So when you chant Om, you are shedding the layers of external abstraction. You aren't mapping reality, you are participating in the substance of it.
The philosophical assertion here is that everything we see, touch, and experience is simply a densified, slowed-down manifestation of this primal sonic vibration.
Okay, but this is where a massive dissonance arises for me. If the entire universe boils down to this single, immutable vibration, and our own faculty of speech is our direct link to it, my daily experience does not feel like an immutable, infinite vibration.
It definitely doesn't feel like that most days.
No, it feels fragmented, stressful, and highly subject to change. So how does the Upanishad bridge the gap between Om as the ultimate reality and the fractured way you and I actually experience life?
Well, the Mandukya Upanishad bridges that gap by systematically mapping human consciousness. It takes the totality of human experience and divides into 4 distinct states.
And it explicitly aligns these states with the phonetic architecture of the syllable Om.
Yes. Phonetically, Om is composed of 3 distinct letters in Sanskrit: A, U, and M, followed by a silence.
And the Upanishad correlates these phonetic components with the waking state, the dreaming state, the deep sleep state, and finally, the underlying reality behind them all.
So let's break those down. Let's begin with the first quarter, the A of AUM.
Right. This is the waking state, known as Jagrat. And the consciousness operating in this state is given the name Vaishvanara.
The text tells us its sphere of action is the waking world, and it is conscious of external, gross objects.
Which seems straightforward enough, right? It's what you and I are doing right now, relying on our physical senses to navigate a physical world.
It seems straightforward, but Shankaracharya's commentary asks us to look much closer at the mechanics of Vaishvanara.
Because in the waking state, your consciousness is violently thrust outward.
Exactly. You are entirely externalized. You assume that the objects you were looking at, the table, the computer, the trees outside, have an independent, concrete reality completely separate from your observation of them.
You consume these gross physical objects through your sensory organs, and this consumption basically defines your entire sense of self in that moment.
You identify completely with the physical body and its environment.
So that outward projection is like the live, real-time feed of reality. But the second quarter, the U in AUM, complicates this entirely.
Yeah, this is the dreaming state, Swapna.
And the consciousness here is named Taijasa, which means the luminous. The text describes Taijasa not just as a passive observer of dreams, but as an entity possessing 7 limbs and 19 mouths, enjoying subtle objects.
I know the imagery of 7 limbs and 19 mouths sounds completely mythological.
It really does sound like a monster from a fantasy novel.
Right, but it is actually a highly precise psychological diagram. The 19 mouths are the exact instruments through which human consciousness consumes experience.
Okay, so let's count them out. They consist of the 5 organs of perception, right? Hearing, touch, sight, taste, and smell.
Yep, and then the 5 organs of action, speech, grasping, locomotion, generation, and excretion.
And then you add the 5 vital breaths, or pranas, which regulate the body's autonomic systems.
So that's 15. The final 4 make up the internal organ, the antakarana.
Which is divided into the mind, which processes sensory data.
The intellect, which discriminates and decides.
The ego, which claims ownership of the experience.
And the memory, or mind stuff, which stores all those impressions.
But wait, if the ego is just one of these 19 mouths, that implies our very sense of I is merely an instrument we use to consume the world.
Exactly. It's not our ultimate identity, it's a tool, just like our eyesight or our hands.
That is a huge shift in perspective. So in the waking state, we use all 19 of these instruments to interact with physical matter. But how does Taijasa use them in the dream state when the physical body is completely paralyzed on the bed?
Well, in the Taijasa state, the external world is shut off. The eyes are closed, the ears are muted to the outside. But the mind continues to operate those 19 instruments internally.
Because over the course of your waking life, every interaction leaves a subtle impression, a vasana, on the mind stuff.
Gaudapada explains this beautifully. He says that in the dream state, the mind acts like a canvas. Driven by your unresolved desires, your fears, and your past karma, the mind illuminates these stored impressions using its own internal light.
Hence the name Taijasa, the luminous.
Right. It projects an entire universe of subtle objects without any external physical material whatsoever.
So my brain generates the ground I walk on in the dream, the sky above me, the people I talk to, and the very body I inhabit within the dream.
It creates both the terrifying tiger chasing you and the terrified version of you running away.
Which is a crazy level of processing power when you think about it.
And this is where Gaudapada introduces a radical epistemological wedge. He points out that while you are inside the dream objects are absolutely terrifyingly real to you.
Oh, absolutely. The dream tiger induces genuine physiological panic. I wake up sweating.
And the dream water quenches your dream thirst. The duality, the strict separation between you as the cognizer and the tiger as the cognized object, is ironclad.
Until the alarm clock rings, my eyes open, and I instantly dismiss the tiger as a mere projection of my own mind. I realized the duality was a complete illusion. I was both the tiger and the victim.
Now, Gaudapada asks the ultimate philosophical question based on that.
Which is?
If your mind possesses the staggering power to project a perfectly convincing dualistic reality out of itself while you sleep, what makes you so certain that the waking state, the Jagrat state you are so confident in right now, is not simply another projection?
Okay, that is deeply unsettling. But the usual defense is that the waking world has continuity, right? I leave my keys on the table, go to sleep, and they are still there when I wake up. Dream objects vanish. They don't have practical utility in the waking world.
Gaudapada actually anticipated that exact defense. He argues that objects are only useful within their specific state.
Right.
The water you drink in a dream serves no purpose when you wake up. True. But the water you drink in the waking world serves absolutely no purpose to the man dying of thirst inside a dream.
Oh, wow. So each state is internally consistent but mutually exclusive.
Exactly. From the absolute standpoint, Gaudapada argues, both states are characterized by the mind vibrating under the influence of Maya. It's projecting an illusory duality of subject and object where none truly exists.
Okay, so if the live broadcast of the waking state and the recorded playback of the dream state are both projections of duality, what happens when the projector shuts down completely?
This brings us to the third quarter, the M in AUM, the state of deep, dreamless sleep called Sushupti.
And the consciousness here is named prajna.
The Upanishad defines this state very carefully. It says, that state is deep sleep, where the sleeper does not desire any enjoyable thing and does not see any dream.
From the perspective of the waking ego, that sounds like annihilation. It just sounds like a void.
But the text pushes back hard against the idea of a void. It calls prajna a mass of mere consciousness, or prajnanagana.
It states that in this deep sleep, thought and knowledge are enveloped in a veil of unconsciousness. But I struggle with this. How can a state of unconsciousness be described as a dense mass of consciousness?
Shankaracharya uses a really powerful analogy to explain this. Imagine you are standing on a mountaintop during the day.
Okay, I'm there.
You see distinct trees, rivers, houses, and valleys. The phenomenal world is highly diversified. Then the sun sets, and a pitch-black, moonless night envelops the landscape.
Right, it gets totally dark.
The trees, rivers, and valleys do not cease to exist. They do not vanish into a void. But your ability to perceive their distinct boundaries is gone. They all merge into one undifferentiated mass of darkness.
Oh, I see. So the diversity collapses into unity, but the substance absolutely remains.
Exactly. In deep sleep, your memories, your anxieties about the future, your entire constructed identity, they don't die. They just lose their rigid boundaries and melt down into an undifferentiated state.
And because the friction of those boundaries is gone, the Upanishad describes the state as profoundly blissful. There is no strife, no desire, no fear.
Is the bliss of temporary relief from the exhausting burden of the ego. But we must be very careful here because the text makes a seemingly paradoxical claim about prajna.
Yeah, it calls this unconscious, deep sleeping entity the Lord of all, the origin and the end of all things.
Which throws a lot of people off.
It threw me off. If I am snoring in my bed, completely oblivious to a fire alarm ringing down the hall, how can any philosophical text seriously label me the omniscient Lord of all in that exact moment? It feels like an absurd elevation of biological rest.
It makes sense only when you understand Shankaracharya's rigorous definition of causality. He explains that prajna is the causal state. It is the raw, unmanifested material from which the other two states emerge.
Give us an analogy for that.
Consider a tiny banyan seed. If you cut it open, you won't see miniature branches or leaves inside. You just see an undifferentiated pulp.
Right, it's just mush.
Yet that pulp is the causal engine that will generate a massive tree spanning acres. Prajna is the seed form of your universe. When you fall into deep sleep, the vast, complex tree of your waking and dreaming realities collapses back into this dense, unmanifested seed.
And when you awake, the seed sprouts the universe anew.
Exactly. Deep sleep is the origin because waking life sprouts from it, and it is the end because waking life dissolves back into it.
But if it is the causal seed of reality, why aren't we liberated when we sleep? I mean, why do we wake up just as confused and anxious as the day before?
This is perhaps the most vital epistemological distinction in Advaita Vedanta. Shankaracharya draws a hard line between non-apprehension of reality and misapprehension of reality.
Okay, unpack the difference for us.
Imagine you are walking down a dark road. If it is so dark that you cannot see the ground at all, you are suffering from non-apprehension. You simply don't know what is there.
You are ignorant, but you aren't actively hallucinating.
Correct. Now imagine there is a slight amount of light. You look down and see a coiled rope on the path, but because of the dim light and your own internal fear, you scream and run away, entirely convinced it is a deadly snake.
Oh, wow. So you have now moved from non-apprehension to misapprehension. You are actively projecting a false reality onto the truth.
Exactly. Now let's apply this to the states of consciousness. Deep sleep, prajna, is the total darkness. It is non-apprehension.
So I am resting in the bliss of the seed state, but I am completely ignorant of my true nature. I don't know the truth.
And waking and dreaming are the dim light. They're characterized by misapprehension. You open your eyes, the seed sprouts, and you immediately look at the non-dual reality of Brahman and misapprehend it as a terrifying, fragmented snake of a universe.
You project duality. You project me and other.
So cycling through waking, dreaming, and deep sleep is really just bouncing back and forth between actively hallucinating the snake and passing out in the dark.
Misapprehension to non-apprehension over and over again for an entire lifetime.
You are trapped in the cycle of cause and effect. Deep sleep is the cause. Waking and dreaming are the effects. You are locked in the machinery of the mind.
To achieve liberation, to stop the cycle, you must find a vantage point outside of the machinery.
Which brings us to the crescendo of the Mandukya Upanishad, the seventh mantra which reveals the fourth, Turiya.
Turiya literally translates to the fourth. But the Upanishad immediately struggles against the limits of human language to describe it.
Well, language is built on duality, right? Subject, verb, object. How do you describe a state that predates duality?
It resorts to a process of negation, describing Turiya almost entirely by what it is not.
It says, it is not subjective experience nor objective experience, nor is it a negative condition which is neither consciousness nor unconsciousness.
It is not the knowledge of the senses, nor is it relative knowledge. It is beyond the senses, beyond the understanding, beyond all expression. It strips away every single tool we use to define reality.
It has to strip them away because any attribute you assign to Turiya immediately turns it into an object of the mind.
Like if you say Turiya is blissful, you have created a duality between the experiencer and the bliss.
Exactly. Turiya is the pure, unfiltered consciousness that illuminates the mind in the first place.
The text says, it is ineffable peace. It is the self. Know it alone. And the commentary adds a phrase that radically shifted my understanding. It says, Turiya is that which is awake in us even while we sleep.
That phrase unlocks the entire philosophy.
Sure.
It proves that Turiya is not a sequential step. Our minds hear the fourth and assume a timeline.
Right. We think waking is step 1, dreaming is step 2, deep sleep is step 3, and if we meditate hard enough, we unlock level 4.
I fell into exactly that trap too. I imagine Turiya as a supercharged trance state you enter after you master deep sleep.
But if Turiya is a state you enter into, it means it must have a beginning. And anything with a beginning must inevitably have an end.
It would just be another temporary experience bound by cause and effect. Gaudapada explicitly states in his Karika that Visva, the waking consciousness, and Taijasa, the dreaming consciousness, are bound by both cause and effect.
And prajna, deep sleep, is bound by cause alone.
But Turiya is bound by neither. It is birthless, sleepless, and dreamless.
Let me test an analogy to solidify this, because it's a lot to hold on to. We can map these states to the experience of a movie theater.
Okay, let's hear it.
Waking life is like sitting in the cinema watching a chaotic, high-definition action movie. You are gripped by the plot, you're flinching at the explosions. Dreaming is like the projectionist switching to a surreal, abstract, avant-garde film. The rules of physics are gone, but you are still entirely absorbed in the images.
Right.
Deep sleep is when the projector is turned off entirely. The room is pitch black, silent, and restful.
So where does Turiya fit into the theater?
Turiya isn't a movie, and it isn't the darkness. Turiya is the screen itself. The screen is the constant, non-dual background. When the action movie plays, the screen holds the images. When the surreal dream plays, the screen is there. When the projector shuts off and the darkness falls, the screen doesn't cease to exist. It simply holds the darkness.
The screen is utterly untouched by the fire in the action movie, and it is completely unharmed by the darkness of the empty room.
It is the silent witness to all three states, ever present, completely unaffected by the drama projected onto it.
That captures the essence of non-duality perfectly. The suffering we experience in life happens because we identify exclusively with the character in the movie. We think we are the victim of the plot.
And the Mandukya Upanishad is basically shaking us by the shoulders, demanding we realize that our true identity is not the fleeting image. Our true identity is the indestructible screen. You are Turiya.
But realizing you are the screen while you're actively being chased by the metaphorical tigers of waking life mortgages, illness, grief, that feels impossible.
It really does. The movie is incredibly convincing. So how do we stop hallucinating the snake? The Upanishad doesn't leave us stranded with just a breathtaking metaphysical theory, right?
Not at all. It hands us a highly practical tool for cognitive dismantling. It brings us right back to the syllable Om.
So the Upanishad provides a precise meditative technology. It maps the phonetic components of AUM directly onto the psychological states we just explored, allowing you to use sound to trace your consciousness back to its source.
The letter A is mapped to waking state. The letter U is mapped to the dreaming state. And the letter M is mapped to deep sleep.
And Shankaracharya dives deeply into the mechanics of how these letters interact during chanting.
Yeah, when you physically vocalize AUM, the sound A originates at the very back of the throat. As the sound moves forward through the mouth, it transitions into U. Finally, the sound reaches the lips, which close to form the M, bringing the vibration to an end.
He uses an agrarian metaphor here to explain the merging of these states, comparing deep sleep to a measuring vessel called a prasta.
In ancient times, a prasta was a standard vessel used to measure out grains like barley. You pour the barley in, it fills the vessel, and then you pour it out.
Okay, so how does that connect?
Shankaracharya says that deep sleep, the M sound, is like that measuring vessel. The waking and dreaming states are the barley. When you fall asleep, your waking and dreaming experiences are poured into the vessel of deep sleep. They dissolve into the M.
And when you wake up, they are poured back out.
Exactly. So chanting AUM is a deliberate, conscious reenactment of the universe, expanding into duality and collapsing back into the seed state. The vibration spans the entirety of phenomenal existence. But if A, U, and M only cover waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, where is Turiya?
Turiya is found in the fourth aspect of Om, which is not a letter at all. It is called the Amatra.
The measureless, the partless.
The Amatra is the profound, unbroken silence that immediately follows the chanting of AUM, and then silence.
But crucially, you must realize that this silence is not merely the absence of sound.
Right. It is the very canvas, the underlying presence, upon which the sound was projected. The sound of Om is born out of that silence, exists within that silence, and dissolves back into it.
That living silence is Turiya. So when you chant Om, you're not trying to summon God with a magic word. You are using the physical vibration to gather up your waking and dreaming mind, pouring them into the M of deep sleep, and then deliberately stepping off the edge of the sound into the measureless silence.
You are using the sound to locate the screen.
By repeatedly bringing the mind to the edge of that silence and holding it there, the practitioner achieves a state Shankaracharya calls Amanabhava.
Which translates to when the mind ceases to be the mind. And when I first read that, my immediate reaction was highly defensive.
It sounds scary.
It does. I thought, does spiritual liberation require me to lobotomize myself? Does the mind ceasing to be the mind mean I enter a permanent catatonic trance, completely checked out of reality?
It is the absolute most common fear encountered in Advaita Vedanta. The ego is terrified of its own dissolution. But Amanabhava is not the destruction of your cognitive faculties. It is the destruction of your delusion.
Bring it back to the snake.
Okay, think back to the rope and the snake. When someone turns on a bright flashlight and you finally see that it's just a rope, your eyesight isn't destroyed.
The rope doesn't vanish.
Right. What vanishes is the snake. The hallucination ceases.
A mind ceases to vibrate with fear and desire because the duality it was reacting to has been exposed as a projection.
Exactly. When the mind ceases projecting duality, it rests in its true nature. It becomes the fearless Brahman.
So the mundane world does not evaporate. You still chop wood and carry water. You still interact with your family and fulfill your duties.
But your relationship to the phenomenal world is fundamentally altered.
The text makes a massive promise here. It says, for a man ever fixed in Brahman, there can be no fear anywhere.
Because fear requires an other. It requires a belief that the world is separate from you and capable of destroying you.
But if you have used Om to realize you are the indestructible screen, there is nothing left to fear. The action movie plays out, there are tragedies and triumphs on the screen, but you remain absolutely untouched.
You act in the world with total freedom, rather than reacting out of blind panic.
And the Upanishad concludes its magnificent 12-verse journey with a simple declaration. He who knows Om enters the self through his self.
You don't need to travel to a distant heaven. You use your own consciousness to penetrate your own consciousness.
Om reveals the self. Beyond the loud, live broadcast of our waking days, beyond the surreal playback of our internal dream dramas, and beyond the heavy unconscious seat of our deep sleep, beyond all the changing machinery of the mind lies pure, untouched consciousness.
Turiya.
And that pure, silent awareness is your truest, most intimate identity.
It is a radical reimagining of who you are. You are not the frail, anxious creature navigating a hostile universe. You are the space in which the universe happens.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, a way to actually test this philosophy in the laboratory of your own life tomorrow. The Upanishad insisted that Turiya is awaken us even while we sleep.
It is the constant screen.
So if that untouched, peaceful, witnessing presence is always awake inside you right now, underneath the noise of your thoughts, how might your waking life change if you tapped into just a fraction of that peace during your most stressful moments?
The next time you are overwhelmed, stuck in traffic, or gripped by anxiety, see if you can take one breath, sound the Amatra in your mind, and remember the screen.
You don't have to fight the movie. You just have to remember you aren't the movie. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today. If you found value in this exploration of the Mandukya Upanishad, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We want to know how you experience that silence.
Keep an eye out for our upcoming deep dives. We will continue to explore the other principal Upanishads through the rigorous, illuminating commentary of Shankaracharya. The architecture of reality is vast, and there's so much more to uncover.
Until next time, remember, the diagnostic waters of the waking mind might be muddy, and the dreams might be chaotic, but the blueprint of the universe is already written entirely inside you. Just listen for the silence.